Hello and welcome everybody to the 20XX Architecture Symposium, Architectural Education, COVID-19. My name is Jason Griffiths. I'm an associate professor in the architecture department. So the emergence and the spread of infectious diseases and with pandemic potential have occurred regularly throughout history. The plague and cholera flu have been more recently followed by the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, firstly with the SARS virus and then MERS and now COVID-19. Infectious diseases leading to pandemics are caused by pathogens that are transmitted through human contact. This relationship of spatial arrangement and infectious diseases affects us as designers as much as anybody, if not more. It is a game changer precisely because we deal in space. We deal in gatherings, flows, and movement that shape the agency of the human collective. But what happens when the fear of a pandemic is embodied by the fear of spaces? What happens to the pedagogy of architecture and the physical space of a curriculum that is so dependent upon teaching by example, so dependent upon teaching through the physical presence of the tangible experiences of architecture? How does this affect the projects that we set for students? Projects that once seemed so based on assured assumptions now seem so fragile. Assumptions like globalization, assumptions like international travel, and affordable consumption and spacious accommodation. Do we respond with the blind insistence that it's just a matter of returning to normal? But is that normal a version of magical thinking? Perhaps we may never be the same. The vaccines and masks and isolations may be with us for longer than we wish. Or can we become more strategic and more resilient? So the theorist Stephanie Wakefield may argue that Intropic Systems have never really left us. That systems grow and then they fail and then they re-emerge in this continual figure of eight kind of looping pattern. She might argue that the more deterministic we are about the futurology of linear paths of continual and progressive growth, the more we argue for that, the more in danger we are of being caught unaware, like being caught without enough masks, or to put it another way, to be unmasked, to expose a face of naivety. The subliminal nature of being overwhelmed by forces beyond our control today takes the form of microbiological photographs of an invisible and threatening landscape of germs. However, systems falter, but they don't fail. Nothing is ever as catastrophic or ever as successful as we may want it to be. Communication may have improved, resilience may have grown. Perhaps we could argue that the rise of the nation state has spawned the circular economies that counter the excesses of globalization. New models of teaching might outdate the old ones, and research may be shaken into the relevance through the unknown. So I was approached by my director, David Carley. I think some of the work from the back loop last year promoted this as a way of starting to think about the effect of the COVID pandemic upon us. So I've gathered a panel of experts, moderator, and happily I have the pleasure of being able to ask all these difficult questions and then sit back and place the burden of responsibility upon my colleagues. My colleagues being Jeffrey Day, a professor, founder of FACT and one half of the Design Build initiative here. The other half should be plainly obvious. Assistant Professor Zach Tate-Porter, historian and theorist who challenges architectural notions, who challenges architectural thought through the notion of ground. Bud Shenefelt, who approaches the discipline through regional and local healthcare initiatives, and also Professor Peter Olshavsky, a historian and theorist who adopts contemporary phenomenology to question the late modernist architecture. So we are happily also joined by Antje, I think a friend of the school, Antje Steinmuller from the California College of Arts, the CCA, where she chairs the Bachelor of Architecture program and co-directs Urban Works Agency, that is CCA's Urban Research Laboratory. Her teaching is focused upon new typologies and urban commons and the new forms of collective living. So I think that is probably my cue. How am I doing for time?